welcome to another episode of the Rollwise Podcast, your show where we talk about gaming and things adjacent. This week, we're going to be discussing a new game from a creator called Rel, who has actually got a game up on BackerKit right now called Distal. Now, this game, it's an interesting look about what you want out of your role playing games, and I think that after we've read this over the last couple of weeks and we've kind of got a feel for it, we are going to provide you our opinion on how the game feels. We haven't actually had a chance to play test it yet. I mean, as you guys know, we have obviously have games that we're playing on the side, and we also have games that we're playing on stream. This one has not been slotted in yet, but hopefully, if we have a chance to give it a try, the game currently does have alpha rules out. So if you do follow Rel on BackerKit, you can get a copy of his final alpha, which is saw that he announced that, and I think there we go. So I guess what I'll do is I'll just explain a little bit about the game itself, and I'm going to share the actual backer kit thing, just so we can have that point of reference, and then we'll just kind of this will just devolve into our thoughts. So you guys ready for this?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, go for it.
No. Yes.
Share away, sir. Share away.
All right, share away. Here we go. Okay, so here's the backer kit and everything like that. And what you're looking at is that it looks like the pitch for the game is going to be that it's focused on the hardships and basically the trials and tribulations that your heroes are going to go through, as opposed to necessarily the heroes themselves. Now, one of the things that as you're going through, though, is that the game seems very easy to pick up and play. Now, did you guys have it? Did you guys like, you guys saw that they had different races and everything like that? But did you guys enjoy the backstory prompts?
Yeah, I think backstory prompts are good for any game, just because I kind of like what we talked about in one of our last episodes
Mhm.
is like you kind of want to rein in a backstory and get the information that you want instead of it just going kind of wacky gonzo. I'm the dragon slayer. And I think having prompts and it written into the game helps kind of corral that kind of instinct to make your character something that maybe they're not going to be in play. So I think that's good. I think that's a really good step. I prefer that in a lot of games. So, and I would do that as a GM for games anyways, kind of focus that backstory a little bit.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, having been exposed to it with a lot of the games that we've played in the last year and a half, I think they're more and more important with how people play tabletop role playing these days. A lot of people, anyways. It helps add some party cohesion. It does help you pick a less tropey character. Like if you want to play a tropey character, that's fine. It just isn't always super successful. If you know what I mean. If you're like way out on the fringe with the trope, pushing it as far as you can. And I think some of those backstory things make you think a little bit more about things with the character that actually help you role play down the road. Because that they're there, they also give, like we talked about last week, or on a previous episode, I guess I should say, it also gives the DM some plot hooks that they can use to tie into stuff to help, sort of ground your character in the setting and everything. And so I liked them.
Yeah, if not hooks, maybe knives, I guess is what I would say. He went for it.
Or other cutlery, spoons,
forks, entire tableware sets, something along those lines.
Yeah, Mike doesn't like the spoons as well as he likes the knives.
I definitely play with sharp things. So the interesting part about it is that in terms of like, just to give a kind of an example of how this background system, and this is what I think is neat about it, is that your backgrounds are basically going to be the prompts that determine how your character develops from from like in terms of skills and everything like that as you place them on your character sheet. Now, obviously, you can choose like they have it listed as lineage in this, and so you can choose like whether you're an Atlian or Fury or something like that. And one comment here, this is no dig or anything like that, but there are so many cool kind of like setting specific names for all of the races, except dwarves and elves. Dwarves and elves. Bang, bang. I thought that we'd actually get some changes there too. But like, I mean,
Well, we might still.
yeah, we might. I just thought it was kind of funny because they have like all these really cool names like Ul's Daughter and Wild Walker and Bane and stuff like that. I mean,
Well, the rules are still in alpha. Maybe some of that's subject to change.
so that might be my one suggestion if I was going to put one out there is give elves and do. Not that I've got a campaign for that or anything. But after you get past choosing like your lineage and everything like that, you're writing your background, and it's 2 sentences. I mean, and I've seen him post this in his video, so I'm not like spilling the beans or anything like that. But I grew up, and then you get a prompt, and my days were spent, and you get a prompt. I became prompt number 3, the day prompt number 4. And each of these prompts mechanically benefit your character in some way. And so, for an example, the character that I was rolling up, is basically like just to kind of see how it went is you roll a d20 and you have 20 different prompts or anything like that. And you can have something like, I grew up on the streets. And so then, therefore, your character has the benefit of streetwise +1, pip, body language +1 pip, criminal contact, meaning you already build in a bond to your character as well.
Sure.
And I felt the breadth and range of those types of components to your backstory, and the fact that you had 4 tiers of that was really kind of interesting. I mean, it was. I thought it was a neat way to kind of build the character. I do have to say though that in terms of the backstory and everything like that, I was curious if you guys like. I didn't see anything that like determined your character's goals. It would. I think almost it would be interesting to kind of have that be. And I want most. That kind of thing.
Yeah,
But
that would be a good one, but that can oftentimes come up in play. Like people will
it
decide what
can.
they want of their character,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and having a strong idea of who they are before
Mhm.
you start playing will give you an opportunity probably to develop that want of that character a lot easier.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because obviously, I think mechanically it wouldn't have any benefit to your character, because you
Right.
obviously have. He mentions in tying up loose ends like what makes them tick, what do they care about, who do they care about, and all those kind of things. I think those is just one of those. That's just that question for me. It's just like if you're going to put something out there, like what is your goal? Always make sure that question. Um, and so that was kind of. I mean, I thought that was kind of a neat way to build your character from that. And you can obviously choose different prompts to gain the benefits of the prompt if you wanted them. But
Yeah, no, I liked I heard him describe it in one of the I watched several of the videos on his YouTube channel over the last few days, and hearing him describe it, like if you really don't feel comfortable doing it, you can simply roll on the table
Mhm.
and either accept what you get or go, I really don't want that one, but this one looks better now.
Right.
You can kind of pick your own. You can go totally away from what is on the table, as long as it's along the same line, you know what I mean? As long as it gives you enough to build the character from.
Yeah, there's a lot of freedom and
There
freeform in that
is.
sort of background building.
Mhm.
And like you said, it allows you to tie in with other characters nicely too.
Yeah.
That sort of 20 question styles is something that I think gets homebrewed a lot. So
Yeah.
it's kind of neat to see it intrinsic to the system and
Mhm.
actually make like and actually give people like mechanical benefits from doing the work.
Well, yeah, no, I had a friend who, growing up, like his dad was always fixing cars in the garage and had like a full set of mechanics tool set, even though he was not like a trained mechanic, right? He was more of a machinist kind of guy. But my friend knows more about repairing cars than I did because he grew up in that, right? I know
Mhm.
more about working on a ranch. I, not a full-fledged rancher, but I was around it enough growing up that there are things that I'm aware have to happen that I think your average person wouldn't, right? It's just part of your background.
Yeah,
Mhm.
your background, you pick up on things,
Yeah,
even
and
if you
it
want
sort
to.
of gets overlooked because, in a lot of games it's like, no, we have these pick 6 of these 20 skills and everybody's cherry picking the ones they think are going to come up the most. A few
Yeah.
people are like, well, this is my character, so my character would know these 8 things that are never going to come up, right? The
Mhm.
the history of fine art in one small region, you
Yeah.
know, winemaking and writing, romantic poetry. I've played with people like that, and they love playing those characters, but then in skill checks, they don't ever get anything Done.
Right. It's picking the non-optimal choice in some of the especially in normally in D&D style games leads to feels badsies sometimes. Where it's
Yeah.
like, this is esoteric romance poems or what my character knows. Is that ever, unless the GM specifically writing for that character, like that's never
Right.
going to come up as a thing.
Yeah. Well, and the nice thing about the prompts here is that they're all general enough that they just
Mhm.
they apply to anything, and I think they make sense, which is I think really interesting.
Yeah, they
They were
do.
able to, like, when you say I grew up during a time of war, it gives you +1 politics, +1 strategy, and weapon proficiency, and those all make sense to me. Like, it doesn't
Mhm.
feel like
But
any of the benefits that I saw from, like, the prompt didn't feel out of place or anything. And I
no, they
thought
all
you had
make
a
sense.
good variety of them too. Like, since there's
Yeah.
20 prompts, it would be hard to make the same background twice, even given like one similar.
Well, and even if you did, that box that it puts you into is wide.
Yeah.
It's not super narrow. I grew up in a time of war. Were you
Mhm.
near the front lines? Were you just in a town where half of the population disappeared because they all went to serve in the war? You know what I mean? Like you're in a small village and suddenly it's
Yeah.
the
But
everybody chipping in everybody that didn't go to war is now, doing things they didn't do the day before.
but
Yeah,
but I
there's a
just
lot of choices.
well,
I
and it's
like it.
just funny too because like I grew up during a time of war, and my days were spent promoting a cult. Oh, that's a fun
That could be.
backstory all of a sudden.
I
It's
so,
an
so
interesting backstory,
Yeah,
anyways.
you put enough
so
stress on society, stuff happens.
yeah, and I
All I'm
think
gonna say.
but that's what I kind of like about these prompts is that I think you can gravitate to, even if you roll, you can go, oh, these are interesting in terms of like what it is, because I mean I grew up during a time of war herding livestock. Who hasn't heard that typical fantasies, origin story, like,
Right.
you know what I'm saying? It goes from that obviously to promoting a cult, and you're like, oh well, that's a very different origin story to start with. And I think both have their place and both can be played. So I really liked the backgrounds in terms of just how they got the people to start thinking about their characters and everything like that in terms of that. And I personally feel from all the fiction first and narrative heavy games that we've been playing lately, I like that component to it. And I don't know if I've seen as many high fantasy games, really do that. I know Daggerheart is attempting to be a much more fiction type of play. Um, but high fantasy, I don't, is it that a common thing in high fantasy? Like, I never played Dungeon World, so I don't know what they're doing over there. But
No, I mean, I don't think so. I mean, Dungeon World, since I believe it's powered by the Apocalypse, sort
mhm.
of. So it would have like background connections with each other, but I don't know if it's going to have like a super lot of detail about your character.
Yeah. So if anybody's played Dungeon World and they know the answer to that, let us know. Comments below. We haven't played it yet.
Or
We'll
wait,
look.
is Dungeon World a peasant funnel?
No, that's
No,
Dungeon Crawl Classic.
that's in Dungeon Crawl Classics. Yeah, no, Dungeon World is the played by the Apocalypse one.
Yeah. And maybe
Yeah.
there's an OSR game that has a similar, but we don't know. So we'd be curious if any played systems like that and if they like that quite a bit. But otherwise, as part of the backgrounds, I mean, I feel like the fact that you do get contacts out of that, um, in a one shot, a contact may not be necessarily the best thing, but um, I feel like you have a variety of contacts that is, and the way that the contacts that work is you basically, I have a D10. They are a local mayor that is frequently out gallivanting and can fund dangerous expeditions. Ooh, how exciting. you know so you get some, and I think that's probably the hardest part about developing contacts is having kind of a way to make them solid enough in your head that you know who they are, but not so formula. You don't formulate them so much that the DM doesn't have any control. Because I know that when we did Delta Green, I think we had an okay time doing contracts, or sorry, not contracts, but bonds. But I feel like bonds can be a hard thing for some people to do because they're just like it's like you hit a wall because you're like, well, what should a bond be? Ooh.
Well, yeah, I mean, it can be. I mean, I don't know. You only need like 3 of them is the good thing, and it's like, who do you want to mentally abuse when you're at home? That's basically
It's true,
who.
but I mean,
who,
Maybe we
who
phrase that. Who do you lean on when things are tough?
yeah.
Sure, sure. beings you lose those bonds at a pretty rapid rate sometimes. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but sure.
It's not the same answer for everybody. Jim Beam, Jack Daniels.
It is, but those can also cause problems with bonds.
Oh yeah, yeah. No, they cause other problems.
Yeah. No, and I think
coping methods can cause problems with your bonds as well.
yeah,
That's
and
fair.
but I feel like in the past when I've tried to do bonds for like Call of Cthulhu or something like that, I've always felt like, oh gosh, now I have to figure out who would be in this person's life. This person who's obviously taken on the most dangerous job on the planet, hunting after eldritch horrors.
Yeah, if they were a decent soul, they would have pushed everybody away before accepting the job. They would have distanced themselves from society in general.
Yeah. But they didn't.
But they didn't. They're still trying to maintain a home life.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yep. And I think that from a character creation standpoint, I think that when you look at characters are expressed mechanically as well as narratively, I feel like it does score points in terms of like how that plays out. And I do, and like I said, I just like the background system for it, as well as I feel like there's enough panache to the images and stuff like that I think create some pretty interesting characters.
Sure.
So, outside of backstories and all that kind of stuff, and really the other thing on here was, one of the main call outs was the near death experience having lasting scars and everything like that. So in this case, they're called death marks. Death marks were an interesting concept because of just how much it affected the game. Now, what are your guys' thoughts on? I mean, first of all, what is a death mark? Um, a- in this game, just to kind of give the overview and everything like that, is that when you begin dying, so when your character is reduced to 0 hit points, that's the
Yep.
that's the condition for it. So when you start dying, you drop prone, begin dying until you're stabilized, and what happens is you're prone and unconscious. Your health is set to 0, and your willpower is depleted, meaning you kind of are just out of the fight and everything like that. Now, what's interesting about the whole dying process in here, though, is that rather than in D&D where it just becomes like this weird, like back and forth, because in D&D all you need is 1 point of healing, and you're like,
yeah, you're right back
and
up.
running. Where in this, it's like basically have to get stabilized, and then you might get back up late.
Well, yeah, it also prevents that. What did he call it in one of his
Yo-yo.
videos? Yo-yo, where I'm up, I'm down, I'm up, I'm down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, and not have there be any consequence to it. And
Right.
I like conceptually how he put this into the rule. Because another thing I don't think we give enough credit for is that this Distal is done solo by him. He's a solo author for the game, which is a fairly impressive feat, no matter how you think about it. And so when you do go down and you gain these death marks, basically death marks cause. I mean, I would think of them as like scars. I think scars is another term I've used.
Scars or injuries or story reasons as to why you have a statistic reduction.
Yep. So you basically lose pips and skills, but because your soul is kind of slightly severed to your body, you actually gain hit points. I thought that was a fairly interesting trade-off.
Yeah, resistance to death. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's. I think it kind of fits, right? Like you get better, you're more survivable, but you can't do some things as well as you used to. You
have a wicked limp, so you can't run as fast.
You're not as athletic, or
yeah,
right. But you don't put yourself in the situation where it's like, I'll sneak up and drop, do whatever, and then run back here. You know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
you're like, yeah, I'm not getting picked for that.
Exactly.
I don't know. I think it's a creative way. I like, because a lot of the design philosophy is that there's meaningful choices and meaningful consequences.
I think that's what's nice about it, is there's consequences. Like just rolling death saves feels kind of arbitrary sometimes in D&D. And so having it matter in this is kind of interesting to me.
Well, it kind of feels like pro wrestling a little bit. It's like 1, 2, and you're out. Your character's dead, but not really.
The death saves in D&D.
Yeah, like,
well, no, like 1, 2, 3, and your character's dead. Like if you recall, You don't want to get to 3 in D&D.
Well,
3 is
yeah,
3
that's
is
my
the point.
point. But it's like it feels more like a countdown, but it doesn't really have any negative effect. And even in D&D, you can just resurrect characters, right? You just go,
That's
oh well,
true.
man, I
That's
gotta
true.
take him back to the priest and get him resurrected.
I mean, in
And
theory, I've never had that happen in a game,
Yeah,
but
it's
in
been a
theory,
long time since we played long enough to get, a spellcaster up there for us to have enough money to go see a spellcaster that already
uh,
can do it. But it
ob-
is an option.
obviously, there's a future goal for you in a future game.
it's true. But
Mike
one
would
of
have
the
to give us magic items.
No, he doesn't. He just needs to give us money to pay a cleric to resurrect our friend, which
What
also,
did we get? You guys
which
get 5 gold
which
each
which given also is a problem.
together.
I just don't want you to disrupt the economy that's so well crafted in my head. If I start giving adventurers all this money, my economy goes to crap. That's all I can say.
Can it be
Uh,
6 or 4 so we can split it evenly?
no.
No, you have to have a knife fight over the
Yeah, somebody gets the extra so the rest can be pissed. Oh, thanks.
Yeah. But what was interesting to me about that is that in addition to the fact that there was the scars process where your character lost skill pips and also gained hit points, was the fact that there were abilities that were tied to your death marks. One of the things I found most interesting was the ferryman class has a harvest spell casting component to it, because each of the different each of the different caster classes had a different spell casting process, which was actually fairly unique to different things.
Mhm.
And so the spell slots that I'll just read it. The harvest spell casting, the ferryman draws its magic from the waning life forces of those around them. Because of this, the ferryman uses the harvest spell casting archetype. You have a number of spell slots equal to 2 plus half your class level plus death marks.
Oh, that's cool. That is
and
cool.
so and so you actually had that, and then it was really kind of neat because recharging spell slots for the spell capture archetype start empty except when a class feature ability otherwise states it, and your spell slots are emptied whenever you conduct any downtime activity. However, you have the ability for death harvest. When a creature is dying within 30 feet, or sorry, when a creature is 30 feet within slain, as in dead, not dying, you recharge one spell slot immediately.
Mhm.
So you're basically this grim reaper harvesting these things, but it's like also the more you attune to death, more powerful
right.
the character becomes, allowing you for spell slot. So there's actually a character that is like definitely interested in
Mhm.
that near death experience more so
At least
than
parts of your character
party.
become more powerful. At least parts of your character become more
Mhm.
powerful, whereas other parts become not so powerful. That's an interesting balancing mechanic too.
Yeah, and I thought it was neat because it and first of all, it puts you in a position where your objective to gain power may not necessarily um
Makes sense to anyone else.
yeah, like your character's like, I need to really get close to death, but not too close. So if I could just you could just let me charge in there and like take a couple for the team, I'll you know.
Right.
But then you have to back off because you can only have so many death marks before your character permanently dies. That's
Right.
what but like at level 2, Death's Messenger, whenever you receive a dying condition, you automatically stabilize. When you reawaken, you regenerate an amount of health equal to the death marks plus fortitude. What? Like
Yeah, that
it
is
just
cool.
there were just some interesting components to it, like I said, in terms of like how the characters use death marks and how it was also could play a part in certain abilities. Now, as this is the alpha, I mean I only saw things related to the ferryman class that had death marks tied to it, but there may be other things I can suspect that could be part of the.
Yeah, and with the alpha, remember everybody that some of these things may change before the real game comes out. So
Mhm.
Yeah, there's gonna be fine tuning and updating, and you know,
we always like to make sure to
it's
throw
it's
that
a
out
good
there.
it's a good reminder.
Yeah, because anytime you say alpha, that's definitely not the finalist age.
No,
But you never
it's
know.
at
It's
least at
always good to
a
say.
state where it's playable, right? Like if somebody wants to download the alpha rules and check things out.
Hmm.
Yeah. So those were, I mean, I have a couple more things that I kind of enjoyed about the game. Did anything jump out at you guys as stuff that you enjoyed about the like way the rules set up or anything?
I mean, I always like these games because they're fairly intuitive. Because they're like D20 games are intuitive because they're still based off of that D20 mechanic, which is kind of like you can pick it up pretty easy and explain it pretty easy if anybody's familiar with D&D. I did like I like the background edition. I think that's good. So that's my call out.
That's your call.
Yeah, like I said, I watched a lot of videos, and just listening to Rel talk about the game, and his passion for it, and some of the ideas that the things that he sees as potential issues with other games, and how he hopes to make that better in Distal. I found myself agreeing with a lot of that. I'm sorry I don't have a ton of specifics because I didn't take notes, and maybe I should have. But
I do have one other one that I thought
Yes.
of. I do like pet plot armor. I feel like that is a good idea personally, because no one wants to watch the movie where the dog dies. So
no. that is true. And in case anybody is wondering what he means by that, is that most companions are immune to damage when meeting certain conditions in the game. So I mean, it's basically they get plot armor, which I think every benefit. I think that's kind of an unspoken home rule in most games. Is it like if you have a dog animal companion, your DM isn't a dick, tries to just kill it? Because
you'd think so, but I have been in some games that definitely wasn't that was not shared with other people running the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I ran a game once where I assured the party that everyone else will die before the dog does. So just so everybody knows, the dog will be the one that survives whatever happens in this game.
Yeah. No, that I think that, but I think that's fair though. I mean, it just seems like that's my personal thing, because I don't know,
Yeah.
unless it's like I mean, I guess if it's like a magical familiar that's kind of an ethereal presence that obviously resummon from it.
If it's not actively participating in conflicts, it should have plot armor to protect it. If it is actually acting as a fighting NPC with the party, then I personally feel that
I think
all things are fair game.
I think there's rules in place in Distal to make sure that's not abused,
right?
As well,
yeah,
if I remember right.
Yeah, you can't have something that can deal damage or
100%
to the enemy and not
would
have any
100%
consequences,
abusable.
right?
Yeah, that would be 100% abusable in that case. But
yeah,
correct.
You just get 2 extra damage around without having to do anything, and nothing bad can happen to anything.
That's why the player would take 2 extra damage a turn. Oh no, they just hit you. But no, they just hit you.
No, if you're gonna allow characters to have pets and they're just there to be pets, then yes, they should be able to outlive the party. That's all I'm saying.
Like I said, no one wants to watch the movie where the dog dies.
You'd hope not. I mean, I feel like that's more common than less, my personal opinion. But so I guess as I was going through, the only other things that I really had encircled and everything like that was first and foremost, I think stylistically, when I looked at like the weapons and everything like that, I think the fact that that he included a sonic weapon, so like when you look at the ranged weapons, I think it was, is that you can take a bell, and as you channel the bell over turns, you can actually do damage with your bell. So stills, bells, and if you get like to the higher level items and everything like that, I think it was the high priced, was the mid price ranged. Yes, a complicated wind instrument such as a bagpipe can do 1d6 sonic damage on the first round and 1d10 sonic damage on the second round. And I mean, come on.
No, there were some creative weapons. There was some neat stuff that I hadn't necessarily seen in the way that I saw it. They may not be wholly original, but they were neat.
All in on death bagpipes. That's all I'm saying.
it does remind me a little bit of almost a JRPG feel to that, like, thematically the way that your character fights is with their weapon. So
Sure.
I do think it's funny that this game might be the best game to play a Noise Marine from 40K and
Wow, even I got that. I've been hanging around you too much, Brent.
that that might be the case. I never thought about it, but now you could literally,
Yeah, now that
like,
you mention it.
the worst part is as soon as you said that, all of a sudden my brain just was like, imagine that Mad Max chase scene with the dude with the, he's just sitting there on the things riffing on that guitar,
Mhm.
switch a couple instruments around, and all of a sudden you got a guy just, blasting acoustic attacks at, whatever
Yeah. Well,
force.
he did have a flamethrower on that thing, so
Flamethrower aside, I'm just saying you're just blowing up, mortar shells. Uh, that just became much more fun
there
in terms of like how to use some of these complicated things. So I
you go. See?
but I just like the thought that you're like, okay, well, how does a bard get involved in this? Okay, sure, they use a sword, but let's say there's some acoustic sonic action going on, and the fact that when they do it longer, they get to step up their dice and everything like that,
Yeah.
depending on some weapons. I thought that was kind of neat. Um, I do like that AOE 20, like the what was it, the the drum or the tambourine, a 10-foot AOE on self, you know. So, but it also is safe to allies, which is kind of a, so you're not going around shooting the bagpipe off. And I've never thought I would say that sentence in my life, but
Go around shooting the bagpipe off.
and you're not hurting your allies at the same time because everyone's just like, make it stop.
I don't know. I kind of like. I'm kind of a big fan of Thunderwave. Like,
I
Mm.
know. I know.
if if you
I know.
if you know that it's there, maybe don't get in the way.
I know.
Yeah. Then the other things, of course, was buffer. You guys talk about buffer and all that stuff. Do you guys remember that?
No, go ahead.
So with certain items and stuff like that, usually it's like armor and shields. Is that there's a buffer that happens in terms of like, God,
Oh,
how do I
like
explain it?
it soaks damage like up
Yeah,
front, right?
it's like a soak that you can use because I was just
Yeah.
looking for an example. So
Yeah, I remember
um,
now. Yeah, it soaks damage up front, so there's mitigation involved.
yeah, so
Right.
low priced hide armor basically chooses, you get a buffer of 1d6 piercing slashing, and then of course they have a way that if your weapon, it's like, let's say you have this hide armor and one buffer can be rolled for one instance of damage and against the type that triggers it. So if it's slashing, piercing, okay, those are great, but bludgeoning, obviously you can't use your buffer and those kind of things. And then when you do is you basically roll the buffer dice, and that's a flat reduction in the amount of damage received. Now, I think the buffer system is actually pretty smart in terms of combat, just
Mhm.
because it feels like it's not too heavy. And the fact that it adds a strangely normal seeming amount of realism to combat, because as you use your armor degrades naturally with these buffer dice, right? Because once your
Because
armor eventually degrades down to D4 and then off the D4, then it's useless effectively.
because that's how armor actually works. Is it reduces damage from impact instead of just making you hard to
I
hit?
can't get beat on forever, and the armor still provides as much protection.
Yeah, and I feel like in other systems where I've seen like armor have durability scores, like I don't feel like it ever really felt like because I think in previous editions of D&D you added durability to the equipment, but I don't feel like,
Yeah.
I thought the durability, all it did was reduce the armor class protection that it offered by X value, which, I mean, once you got hit, you got
Well, no,
hit, right?
well,
Right.
no, that's the thing in D&D that's weird is that D&D armor makes you harder to hit, not actually does anything against the damage.
Yeah.
Which is always the weird abstraction with any version of D&D, really.
Mhm.
But I mean, that gets back to another. I mean, hit points are an abstraction of, so you're not really getting hit either. So
Mhm.
that's probably a whole different episode.
Yeah,
Really,
that's a whole different thing.
we would like to talk about that. That's probably a whole different thing.
But I don't know if I'd want to talk about it. I'm just saying that I felt the buffering system in this was a clever way to make
It
combat
is.
make combat make more sense given that
Yeah, I think
it
it's I think it's a neat way to abstract without to abstract with some realism.
yeah, and it, I mean, it makes your character feel rewarded for wearing heavy armor, right?
Hmm.
Because I mean, and I don't want to get into the math of it because I'm not great at math. And you look at previous YouTube comments, obviously none of us are great at math, but there are people out there that do the math, which is nice. Um, the idea being is if you have an armor class of 15, the impact that it's going to have on saving your bacon is going to be way different than if you have a defense score and then you have a ability to reduce that later. And I
Right.
think when we were playing DC 20, I mean, I hit Brent once and I was like, aha, take 2 points of damage. And he was like, have physical defense. And I was like, oh shit,
Yeah,
nothing.
actually, you don't do any. Yeah.
I actually don't do anything because it grabs onto the heavily fortified armored torso of the dwarf and realizes that the metal is stronger than its teeth.
Right.
Uh
Right.
but that's a feel good moment for the player. Now, I don't know if the players will enjoy that as much. Enemy has a buffer type system. But
Well, yeah, I
No,
mean, just
probably.
that's always been one thing that's hard about games that does well, that this sort of buffer system does well, is like making heavy armor something that's worth wearing has always been a problem in D&D because the trade-off to your dexterity modifier, if you have one at all, is poor. It's usually just better to double down on your dexterity than it is to wear heavy armor.
well, yeah, isn't Dex like the meta? That's basically have a
Yep,
high Dex and you're the best.
it's the meta stat, yeah.
Yeah, and that's too bad because I think it's if you're optimizing in D&D, you end up with very specific styles of builds. Which, if you're into
You
that, then
do.
that's great. But
Yeah.
and I can't say that at least based on what I read so far, I can't really say that there is a win build here. But then again, we haven't played it. All I can really say
Right.
is that based on what we
Which we
read,
usually prefer to do, but we definitely wanted to get word out about the game.
Well,
So
yeah, no,
yeah,
with the backer kit campaign just launching, it's it's hard in there's a lot of different projects out there, for people on various platforms.
yeah,
And it looks like a neat game. I think I'm going to back it. I may not, but I think I'm going to. But I do want to play it.
yeah.
I do want to play it and talk about it, and hopefully we can get that done before the campaign ends. That way, if anybody's sitting on the fence, they can at least see some of what the game's like. Not that we're going to be expert at playing it, but it does give somebody an option, because not everybody has a chance to play alpha version games. You know what I mean? They
yeah.
sometimes it's hard to get your local group to change up, just for can we just stop playing what we're playing for like 3 weeks and do this?
Well,
It isn't always easy.
and not everybody can just invest in random games,
No,
unfortunately.
that's true.
So that's the other thing. So
Yeah,
so yeah.
Yeah. No, and honestly, I think there's a lot to like about it, in terms of
I do too.
formatting, cleanness. Like it feels like the ideas were fairly there, fairly well articulated in terms of like when I was expressing like what he wanted to get out of the alpha to have those participating in the community to help him build the better game. I think he was doing it right. And I feel like as a solo ish project, I mean, that's
Yeah, it sounds like he's the designer. I was going to say lead designer, but yeah, I don't fully know.
I thought I remember seeing on the thing that it's a game that's like it's a passion project of his own. So I mean, the fact that first of all, the fact that he's gone out there and at least gotten this far is effing amazing. So kudos to him for sticking it out, putting together something that aligns with his passion, and putting out a fairly good product so far.
Yeah.
Now
It's a lot of work.
obviously, we'll take see how it plays and everything like that, and hopefully it plays pretty good. We got
Well,
at
you should
least a
check it out.
positive first impression.
Yeah, you should at
Yes.
least go check it out and see if it's your cup of tea.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the alpha rules and you like it, out there for 'em. So,
Mhm.
I mean, there's a ton more we could talk about the game. The only other thing that comes up in my notes is the behaviors for the NPCs. I mean, I like the concept of behaviors. I hate that monster attacks you and then you attack back. I mean, the Alien game was a really good example of like, well, the monster attacks. Oh, it does something. Oh, it ripped off your arm. You
Yeah, no,
know?
no, I forgot about that because that was something that I wanted to touch on. That was the thing that I forgot
Well,
was
okay.
that like, well, the more times like you said, the monsters have behaviors and they have things that they do, and the more times you encounter them, you learn more about them, so that the next time you encounter them, the encounter hopefully goes better for you because you have an idea of what to expect, what kinds
Mhm.
of attacks they like to do, what kinds of things they do. If you know I don't know what all of the behaviors are. I remember his description of, like a wolf pack
Mhm.
attacking people, and I think it's a neat idea. Rather than they have these two attacks. They actually have things that make them seem like thinking semi-strategic, types of enemies, even though their pool of moves isn't infinite, right?
Yeah,
I
you have a number of options for them to do
Right,
that.
and you get better, right? You
Mhm.
you get better facing an enemy that you know than an enemy that is brand new.
Mhm.
Yeah. And at least the beginnings of how the monster section is set up is pretty good. It does remind me a little bit of fourth edition in terms of like how you set up your rules and everything like that. He does expand on it because you have your fodder, hammer, blocker, assassin, support, and your boss characters.
Mhm.
Okay.
And so there is. I think in fourth edition there were just the four. That sound right?
I think
Uh,
so. There might
I
have been
never
more. I
GM'd
don't
fourth
remember.
edition really, other than pre-can stuff. So
yeah,
Yeah, I don't really remember.
yeah. So, but when you look at it, the nice thing about the behaviors, I mean, I think that because the behaviors, there's typically four behaviors under there, but in terms of just like how they work, I mean, I feel like at least this should be inspiration for you to create your own monsters, and you at any
Mhm.
game. I mean, I like this kind
100%.
of I like this kind of thing for any game because it's like, well, how do you create a monster that feels realistic for the players to try to go after? Because what it usually devolves to in D&D is you run into a rat. What do? Well, I attack the rat. Okay, well the rat dislikes you and it attacks back. Really? Is that what rats do? Like
The rats defend themselves.
the,
Yeah.
the rat doesn't really do that. Okay, well what could the rat do? Well, in this case, the rodent swarm, the fragile tutorial fodder, goes, hey, there's something attacking us, and the rats just scramble over you with an overwhelm type behavior, maybe because that's their way of escaping. And I thought that that was a fascinating way to add some
Mhm.
realism to how the combats could play out, or at least give you ideas as to how you can build your own.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and then, of course, if that since we're doing that, we might as well talk about the other combat thing that's interesting is that the nonviolent resolutions component is that they promote is that indicates that if you can set yourself a DC that you basically like you as the player say we want to shoot for a nonviolent resolution. You set you set a DC group check. Party members roll the check, and then you basically do like a back and forth. And I'm sure through role playing and everything like that, as you either
Mhm.
flee, negotiate, or demoralize them, you enter into some things there. But if like if you're fleeing, are you successful in fleeing? If you're negotiating, do you like say, hey, everybody needs to put away their weapons? No. No. Even though it's not a ton of time taken to that nonviolent resolutions, I think that that's a common thing that's overlooked from a lot of other games is how do you
Oh,
resolve
yeah.
things
A lot of
nonviolently?
a lot of these games don't have nonviolent resolutions at all. That's
right,
like
Yeah.
yeah, you kind of have to make them up
there are
or do it
mechanics for that.
right.
It's
Yeah, you do a wink and a handshake with the GM.
roll your diplomacy.
I
Maybe
Yeah.
it'll work.
I want to knock him out. Well, how are you going to do that? Well, I'm going to hit him in the head with my hammer,
Well, you
but
reduce them to 0.
lightly.
You reduce them to 0 hit points. That's how you knock people out
Yeah.
Mhm.
in like D&D. Like you're just unconscious at 0 hit points. You're not dead yet.
Yeah. So honestly, like I said, there was a lot that I loved about looking through the book. Just in terms of the flavor that they were going for, I'd be curious to see how the system or the setting fleshes out because it does seem
Mhm.
as though the game is designed to be played within the setting that they've
Yeah.
created. So that would I kind of would like to know a little bit more about the lore because there's a shortened kind of abbreviated version of the lore. But what about you guys' final thoughts? I mean, like I I talked enough for myself, but I'm curious. Don't want to give you guys any.
No, I mean we all chimed in. I think it's a good game, and if you enjoy D20 games, you should definitely give it a look. You should go check it out.
Yeah,
There's a lot of really good ideas.
I think at least, looking it over, maybe downloading the quick start rules, to get an idea what it's like. At the very least, you'll take a look at somebody else's idea of, hey, if something like Dungeons and Dragons, in this case Distal, was created today instead of 50 years ago, what would be different? What types of things would be incorporated? What kind of things do I want to incorporate into my home game? I think it's right, because like most GMs eventually start creating their own setting and homebrewing, some rules and some different stuff. And most of those are taken from different places.
Yep.
And when you see something neat,
Using your game.
incorporate it. But if you see enough neat things and you like it, I don't know, maybe try it back on the project.
Give it an opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, give it an opportunity. That's one of the things we're trying to do, is raise in our own small way, the awareness that there's games other than Dungeons and Dragons out there. There's nothing wrong with D&D. You love D&D, play D&D. Play the games you love. But there's a lot of great games that we found. There are games that weren't even on my radar a year ago that now are some of my favorite games to play. And what you got to do is give stuff a chance. Find a good group of people and give stuff a chance.
Yeah, definitely give stuff a chance. There's lots of good things.
This is one that I think deserves a chance.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah.
All right. Well, good. I agree. I think this is it was fun to read the game. Like I said, now it'll be fun to see if we can slot in some time to play the game, because we have somehow convinced ourselves to play a lot of games recently, and it's just we could play it at some point down the road, but
the schedule right now looks tight, so we'll have to figure some stuff out. We may have to adjust some stuff on the fly. We'll figure some stuff out.
So we'll see. Okay. Well, if that's the case, and if anybody has played Distal in the alpha playtest or anything like that, or anybody's played games that they feel, they want to recommend or let us know that they want us to look at, we're happy to examine the game and at least give our 2 cents on it. We're obviously not we're not steeped in game knowledge, lore, and all that stuff, but we enjoy and we're passionate about the tabletop RPG community.
We might not be 100% professional, but we do have a lot of experience. That's what I would say.
We're getting there. We're definitely getting there. So, let us know what we can look at next, or share your experience playing the game Distal.
Yeah, please.
Get a chance to do it. So we really appreciate it. Okay, Jeff. Oh wait, there, Jeff.
It's probably
is that where I am on your screen?
Sure.
Because it's totally different.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah, exactly. That's okay. No, if you'd like to continue this conversation, there's the comments below. We're always active and willing to answer and interact. Or you can find us on social media. We are on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube. And you can find us by searching for @Rollwise. You can also email us at rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
Yeah. And once again, just go... you can give Rel's channel just a look and peek and see a lot of information about design philosophies and stuff like that. So give it a look. Go take a look at the backer kit. And as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah.